Explain to us, like, what happens after this? Is there going to be more change, and why are they doing it?
Yeah, like I say, it's a long time coming, but it is a big deal, and this is probably actually only the start of the story rather than the end, because Apple is being very vocal about it's making huge changes. Going to be a real big threat to consumer safety and security online, and they take the consumer experience really importantly in their kind of proposition. Then you've got people like Epic Games, who they've been tussling with in the US, saying they're not going far enough and they need to do more, and the EU is currently in the middle saying, well, we'll look at what they're proposing and see whether it's compliant with this new act. Could potentially, impact Apple's revenues by billions of dollars, but which is actually only a few percentage points at best. So maybe small, but then if the EU gets traction with this, maybe some other international regulators look to do a copycat policy, and suddenly it becomes a kind of a global issue, not just a kind of regional issue.
So Matt, what does it mean? So if I want to download, a new app that I want to use, which means that I don't need to go to the App Store and I can go onto something else.
Exactly. So there will now be rival app stores so you'll have to have an app for the rival app store on your phone. So for example, Epic have said that they're going to have their own app store for their games. So if you want Epic Games sometime in 2024, you'll go to their app store. Microsoft have said that they will look to develop their own app store too. So for Microsoft products, you'll be able to get them from that store. So you'll end up with multiple apps for apps on your phone, which could be quite confusing for consumers, and you don't know as a consumer whether you're getting the same safeguards and security around those apps as you would from the App Store. And that's one of the big points that Apple's making. Beyond that, there are differences around the payment systems. Obviously, right now, you tap and pay with the Apple Pay platform. They're opening up that technology, so rival banks, for example, could have their own tap and pay. So maybe you could go with Amex or MasterCard, for example, instead of the Apple Pay platform. The other thing is the web browser. So right now, the default web browser on your iPhone is Safari. You'll get a choice now to choose a different default, for example, Google Chrome as your default browser.
And Matt, so this is the European Union, because basically they're trying to not be slapped down by the EU Commission. Does it automatically at some point go to the US, or you could have two completely different systems?
Completely different. Every jurisdiction has its own approach on antitrust. Normally with antitrust, it's kind of ex post after the fact, but this is kind of a preemptive move to try to kind of control all of these tech giants in one foul swoop. There's also been some tussles in the US, Apple versus Epic, all sorts of things like that. So they'll have their own approach. Maybe some aspects of it will mimic what's going on in Europe, but it's not going to be exactly the same in any way, shape or form.